You're telling me we're handing over a $200 billion company to someone who started as an intern just 1 year ago? The board members' faces turned to stone the moment they saw the meeting agenda. Because today, a rookie who walked in as an intern barely 12 months ago was being named chairman of the board. Michael Chen, the executive vice president who dedicated 30 years of his life to this company, who'd earned the respect of every single employee, slammed his fist on the conference table. "This is an insult to everyone who built this company," he shouted. "The shareholders will never stand for this. This is absolutely insane." But moments later, the conference room doors swung open. Police officers entered and placed Michael Chen under arrest right there in front of everyone. And in that frozen moment, as everyone watched in shock, the 23-year-old rookie chairman quietly stood up and spoke. That single sentence didn't bring silence to the room. It brought tears. Grown executives who'd spent decades in boardrooms broke down crying. Finally, what exactly happened at that company that day?
Every story deserves to be heard. Subscribe, like, and leave a comment. Your voice keeps the past alive.
The ranch was dying in silence. I stood in the frozen yard at dawn, staring at the paper nailed to the bunkhouse door. The foreclosure notice flapped in the wind, its edges already curling from the cold. 9 days. That's all the bank had given me. 9 days until everything my father built, everything I had bled for, would belong to someone else. Christmas was 5 days away. Not that it mattered. The cattle were gaunt, ribs showing through dull hides. The windmill creaked with every gust, one blade cracked clean through. The well pump groaned each time I worked the handle, metal grinding against metal like it was begging to quit. I understood the feeling, but quitting early felt worse than losing slowly. So I worked, dark to dark. Fence posts, feed bags, anything to keep my hands busy and my mind from counting days. The land stretched out around me, brown and brittle under a gray sky. It used to mean something. Now it just felt like a weight I couldn't put down. I'd made a decision 3 weeks ago, a desperate one. The kind you make when loneliness becomes another debt you can't pay. I'd placed an ad in the territorial paper. Land roof future. Simple words for a complicated lie. I hadn't mentioned the rot underneath. Hadn't mentioned the bank or the debt or the buyer circling like a crow waiting for something to die. Harrison Vale. Cash-rich and patient. Vale had made an offer twice already, each time with that smile that said he knew how this would end. I had refused both times, but the third offer was coming. I could feel it. The stage was due today. I walked to the barn, boots crunching through frost. Inside, the air smelled of old hay and rust. I checked the horses, fed what little grain I had left, then stood there in the dim light, trying to figure out what to say to a woman who thought she was coming to a working ranch instead of a graveyard. By noon, I was waiting at the edge of town. The wind bit through my coat. Other men stood nearby, waiting for freight or family. Kept to myself. When the stage finally rolled in, dust rising behind it, my chest tightened. The door opened. The woman who stepped down wasn't what I'd imagined. She didn't look like hope or rescue or any of the things I'd let myself picture in weak moments. She looked tired. Her coat was patched at the elbows, her boots scuffed and worn. She carried one trunk herself and didn't wait for the driver or anyone else to help. She set it down and looked at me. "I'm Elena Morrison," she said. Her voice was flat, cautious. No warmth, no expectation. "I suppose you're James." I nodded, stepped forward, took the trunk without a word. It was heavier than it should have been, packed tight with whatever life she'd brought with her. We rode back in silence. Elena sat beside me on the wagon, hands folded in her lap, eyes scanning the horizon. I tried to see the ranch the way she must be seeing it. The sagging fence line, the empty corral, the forge by the barn cold and red with rust. The shed with half its roof caved in. She didn't say anything, just looked. The way someone looks at a wound before deciding how deep it goes. When we reached the house, I carried her trunk inside. The cabin was clean but bare. I'd done what I could. It wasn't enough. Elena stood in the doorway, taking it all in. "Thank you," she said quietly. I nodded and left her alone. That night I would tell her the truth. I waited until after supper to tell her. We sat across from each other at the small table, tin plates between us. I'd cooked what I could. Beans, hard bread, coffee that tasted like burnt wood. Elena ate without comment. She hadn't unpacked, hadn't asked questions. Just moved through the evening like someone conserving energy for whatever came next. The lamp flickered between us. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the shutters. I set down my cup. "There's something you need to know," I said. Elena looked at me. Waited. "The ranch is failing," I said. "It has been for 2 years. Drought took the grass. Lost half the herd. Couldn't pay the hands, so they left. Couldn't fix what broke. The bank gave me until the 28th. 9 days from now. After that, it's foreclosure." I watched her face. She didn't flinch. Didn't look away. "There's a man," I continued. "Harrison Vale. He's been waiting for this. He'll buy it from the bank for half what it's worth and turn it into part of his empire. He's been patient. He knows I'm drowning." Elena's hands wrapped tighter around her cup. "You should have said," she said finally. Her voice was calm, but something sharp lived underneath it. "In the ad, in the letters, you should have told me. You wouldn't have come." "I still might not have," she said. "But at least I'd have known what I was walking into." I felt the shame rise in my chest. She was right. I'd lied by omission. Brought her here under false pretenses because I was too proud to admit the truth and too desperate to face it alone. "I'm sorry," I said. Elena stood, carried her plate to the basin, stood there with her back to me, looking out the dark window at nothing. "What were you hoping for?" she asked. "That I'd fix it. That a wife would somehow make the debt disappear." "I don't know," I said. "I wasn't thinking straight. Haven't been for a while." She turned. Her eyes were hard now. No softness left. "I came here because I had nowhere else to go," she said. "My father died 6 months ago. The shop went to creditors. I had a trunk, $40, and no family. Your ad promised something stable. Partnership. That's what you called it in the letter. Partnership." I remembered writing that word. It had felt true at the time. Now it just felt like another lie. "I meant it," I said. "Did you?" Elena crossed her arms. "Or did you just need someone to witness the end?" The words hit harder than I expected. Maybe because they were true. Maybe I had wanted someone else there when it all finally collapsed. Someone to share the weight of losing. "I don't know what I wanted," I admitted. "But I know what I need. I need to save this place and I can't do it alone." Elena studied me. The lamplight carved shadows across her face. She looked older than her years, worn down by something deeper than travel. "I'm not a miracle," she said. "I can work. I'm good with my hands, but I can't save a sinking ship with 9 days and no tools." "I know. Then why am I here?" I didn't have an answer that wouldn't sound selfish. Elena sighed, sat back down. "I'll stay through Christmas," she said. "After that, if this place goes under, we figure out what's next. Separately or together. But no more lies. If we're doing this, we do it honestly." He nodded. "Honest," I said. They sat in silence. Outside the wind howled. Inside the lamp burned low. Neither of us knew if 9 days was enough time to save anything. But the terms were set. Morning would come early. I woke before dawn to the sound of metal on metal. I lay still for a moment, disoriented. The cabin was cold. The fire had burned down to embers. The sound came again, a deliberate strike, clear and rhythmic. I pulled on my boots and coat and stepped outside. The sky was still dark, stars fading at the edges. Smoke rose from the forge. Across the yard. The forge glowed orange in the pre-dawn light. Heat wavering in the frozen air. Elena stood at the anvil, hammer in hand, striking a piece of iron that glowed white-hot. She'd rolled up her sleeves despite the cold. Sweat beaded on her forehead. She didn't look up when I approached. "What are you doing?" I asked. Working, she said. She lifted the iron with tongs, examined it, then thrust it back into the coals. The bellows wheezed as she pumped air into the fire. Sparks flew upward into the dark. I looked around. She'd cleaned the forge. The tools that had been scattered and rusted were now organized on a bench she must have dragged from the shed. The firebox had been rebuilt with brick she'd scavenged from somewhere. The coal pile, which I thought was too damp to burn, was now feeding a steady flame. "How long have you been out here?" I asked. "Since 4. Elena. I'm a blacksmith," she said, cutting me off. She pulled the iron out again and laid it on the anvil. The hammer came down hard, shaping the metal with quick, precise blows. "My father ran a shop outside Cheyenne. Trained me from the time I could lift a hammer. When the railroad came through, they built their own smithy, undercut his prices. He died trying to compete." She struck again. The metal bent to her will. "I kept the shop going for 2 years after," she continued. "Did everything. Horseshoes, tools, wagon repairs. But a woman running a forge, people didn't trust it. Didn't matter how good the work was. They took their business elsewhere. Eventually, I couldn't pay the rent. I watched her work. Every movement was practiced, efficient. No wasted motion. She wasn't experimenting. She knew exactly what she was doing." "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked. Elena finally stopped. Set down the hammer, looked at me. "You didn't ask what I could do," she said. "You asked if I'd come. So I came." The words sat between us. I felt something shift in my chest. Pride maybe, or shame. I'd been so focused on my own failure that I hadn't considered what she might bring beyond companionship. I'd expected a wife, not an answer. "What are you making?" I asked. "Hinge pins," Elena said. "Saw half the doors in this place hanging crooked. Figured I'd start there. After that, I'll fix the well pump, then the windmill bearing, then whatever else is broken." She picked up the hammer again. "People pay for good ironwork," she said. "Farmers need plow blades sharpened, tools repaired. Teamsters need axles fixed. There's a market here, James. You've just been too busy trying to run a cattle ranch to see it." I stared at her, at the forge, at the work already done in a few hours since midnight. "We have 9 days," I said. "Then we'd better not waste them." She turned back to the anvil and struck. The sound rang out across the empty yard, sharp and sure, a declaration. The ranch had been silent for so long that the noise felt like something waking up. I stood there another moment, then went to the barn. She was going to work, so was I. I had fences to mend, tools to sharpen, accounts to organize. If we were going to fail, we'd fail working. But maybe, just maybe, we wouldn't fail at all. The sun broke over the horizon, and the forge burned bright. We fell into a rhythm that felt more like survival than partnership. Elena worked the forge from dawn until her hands cramped. I hauled wood, cut fence posts, patched the barn roof where winter had torn through. We moved around each other like strangers sharing a lifeboat. Careful, efficient, conserving words for when they mattered. By the second day, a farmer named Dietrich showed up with a broken plow blade. "Heard there's a smith working out here," he said, eyeing Elena with open skepticism. "There is," Elena said. She took the blade, examined the crack, and quoted a price. Dietrich hesitated, looked at me. "She knows what she's doing," I said. The farmer paid half up front, came back the next afternoon. The blade was fixed, not just welded but reinforced. The edge re-hardened and sharpened to a clean line. Dietrich tested it with his thumb, nodded slowly, and paid the rest. "I'll mention it to others," he said. Word spread the way it does in sparse country, slow but certain. A teamster brought a bent wagon axle. A rancher needed horseshoes. A woman from town came with a broken door latch and left with 2 new ones. Better than the original. Elena charged fair rates, not cheap ones. People paid. Some came back with more work. I kept a ledger, wrote down every job, every payment. The numbers climbed, but not fast enough. I did the math each night by lamplight, subtracting what we owed from what we'd made. The gap was still too wide. On the fourth day, Harrison Vale rode up. I was hauling scrap iron to the forge when I saw the horse, a tall gelding, groomed and expensive. Vale sat easy in the saddle, hat tilted back, smiling like he'd come to watch something amusing. "Heard you've got a forge running," Vale said. He dismounted, looped the reins over the fence. "Interesting choice." I set down the iron. Elena kept working, hammer striking steady behind me. "We're busy," I said. Vale walked closer, hands in his pockets. He was younger than me, cleaner, well-fed. Everything about him said money and patience. "The bank will take this place in 5 days," Vale said. His voice was conversational, almost friendly. "I'll buy it after. Save yourself the embarrassment, James. Sell to me now. I'll give you enough to start over somewhere else." "We're not selling." Vale's smile widened. "You think a few horseshoes are going to cover what you owe?" Behind us, Elena's hammer went silent. Vale turned, noticing her for the first time. His eyes moved over her, the soot on her face, the leather apron, the hammer in her hand. "Didn't figure you for a working woman," he said. Elena set the hammer down deliberately. Walked forward until she stood beside me. She looked at Vale with the same expression she'd used to evaluate bad metal. "Didn't figure you for anything useful," she said. Vale's smile faltered, then returned harder. "Cute," he said. He looked at me. "You think this changes anything? You're playing for survival. I'm offering you a way out." "We don't need your way out," I said. "You will," Vale said. He walked back to his horse, swung up into the saddle. 5 days, James. Then it's not your choice anymore." He rode off slowly, like a man with all the time in the world. My hands were fists at my sides. The old anger was back, the kind that made me want to swing first and think later. The kind that had gotten me into trouble before. Elena touched my arm just once. "Like, he's trying to rattle you," she said. "Don't let him." I breathed, nodded. We went back to work. That night, the ledger showed progress. Not enough, but progress. 5 days left. By Christmas Eve, I was running on anger and coffee that tasted like dirt. I hadn't slept more than 4 hours in the past 3 nights. Every muscle ached. My hands were raw from work, knuckles split from cold and friction. The ledger sat open on the table, numbers that refused to add up to salvation. We'd made money, more than I'd thought possible in 5 days, but it wasn't enough. Not even close. The debt was a wall we kept throwing ourselves against. Elena sat across from me, steam rising from her own cup. Her face was drawn, shadows under her eyes. She'd been working 18-hour days at the forge, barely stopping to eat. Her hands were bandaged where blisters had opened and bled. "We're short," I said. I didn't need to say how much. We both knew. "I know," sighed. The wind howled. Christmas morning the bank would come. The law would come. It would all be over. Elena set down her cup. "There's the Christmas market," she said. I looked up. "What?" "Red Bluff. They hold a market on Christmas Eve. Runs until midnight. People come from 3 counties. Ranchers, miners, families. They buy gifts, supplies, specialty goods." I paused. "Iron work." I shook my head. "That's 50 miles. We'd need to leave now. And there's a stall fee. Transport cost. If we don't sell. If we don't go," Elena interrupted. "We lose quiet. At least this way we go down fighting." I wanted to argue, wanted to tell her it was too risky, too desperate. But what did we have left except desperate? "What would you bring?" I asked. Elena stood. Walked to the corner where she'd been stacking finished work. She pulled back a tarp. Underneath were pieces I hadn't seen. Custom iron latches with decorative scrollwork. A plow blade she'd hardened using some technique I didn't understand. The metal dark and strong. A gate hinge shaped like cottonwood leaves. Detailed and beautiful. Hooks, hinges, tools. All of it crafted with a precision that went beyond utility. "When did you make these?" I asked. "Nights," Elena said. "After you went to sleep." I looked at her, at the exhaustion carved into her face, the determination that kept her upright. She'd been working while I slept, building inventory for a gamble she hadn't even mentioned until now. "Why didn't you say something?" "Because you would have told me not to waste time on fancy pieces," Elena said. "You would have said we needed to focus on practical work. And you would have been right. But practical work wasn't going to get us there, James. We needed something more." She was right. I would have said exactly that. "If this fails," I said slowly, "we lose faster. We'll have nothing left." "If we don't try," Elena said, "we lose anyway. At least this way we're in control." I looked at the pieces again. They were good. Better than good. The kind of work people would stop to admire, the kind they'd pay premium prices for. He nodded. "We'll need the wagon. Blankets to wrap the pieces. Food for the trip." "Already packed," Elena said. Course she had. We loaded the wagon by lamplight, working quickly despite the fatigue. Every piece wrapped carefully, secured against the journey. The horses sensed the urgency, stamping and blowing steam into the frozen air. By the time we were ready, it was past midnight. Christmas Eve had arrived. We had one day left. I climbed up onto the wagon seat. Elena sat beside me, the wrapped ironwork stacked behind us like hopes made solid. I snapped the reins. The wagon rolled forward into the darkness, leaving the dying ranch behind. Ahead, 50 miles of frozen road. Behind, everything we couldn't afford to lose. The horses pulled steady. The stars wheeled overhead. We didn't speak. There was nothing left to say. Either this worked or it didn't. We reached Red Bluff as dawn broke cold and pale over the mountains. The town was already stirring. Wagons lined the main street, vendors setting up stalls under makeshift canopies. The smell of roasting meat and pine smoke filled the air. Families moved through the early light, bundled against the cold, voices carrying in the stillness. I paid the stall fee, money we couldn't spare, and we claimed a spot near the center of the market. Not a prime location, but visible. Elena unwrapped the pieces while I built a display frame from spare lumber. We worked in silence, hands numb, breath misting. By the time the sun cleared the ridge, we were ready. The ironwork sat arranged on rough wooden shelves, functional pieces in front, decorative ones elevated to catch the eye. The plow blade, the latches, the cottonwood hinge, everything Elena had poured herself into during those sleepless nights. People walked past. Some glanced. Most didn't stop. An hour passed then too. I felt the familiar weight of failure settling over me. We'd gambled everything on this. 50 miles, the stall fee, time we didn't have, and people were walking past like the work was invisible. Elena stood quiet beside me, face unreadable. Then a rancher stopped. Older man, weathered face, hands like leather. He picked up one of the latches, turned it over, tested the weight. "Who made this?" he asked. "I did," Elena said. The rancher looked at her. Back at the latch. He set it down, picked up another piece, examined the weld, the finish. "Good work," he said. "How much?" Elena quoted a price. The rancher nodded, paid without haggling. Others started to notice. A woman stopped to look at the decorative hinge. A teamster examined the reinforced hooks. A store owner from the next county over asked about the plow blade, wanting to know the hardening technique. Word moved through the market the way it had moved through the county, person to person, quiet but certain. By midday we'd sold half the inventory. Elena's hands never stopped moving, wrapping purchases, making change, answering questions about custom orders. I handled the money, kept track of sales, my mind calculating constantly. The numbers were climbing. Actually climbing. A standing order came from a mercantile owner for door hardware. A mining company foreman wanted 20 custom hooks. A woman commissioned a set of fireplace tools. The sun moved overhead. The crowd thickened. Then I saw him. Harrison Vale stood at the edge of the market, watching. He wasn't alone. 2 men flanked him, dressed too well for ranch work. Vale's eyes moved over the crowd, the stall, the diminishing inventory. He was counting, calculating. That smile was gone. I felt Elena tense beside me. She'd seen him too. A buyer approached, a rancher I recognized from the southern valley. He held up the cottonwood hinge, examining the detail. "Who made this?" the rancher asked. I opened my mouth. The words I'd always used, the careful deflections, the vague answers that protected my pride, sat on my tongue like ash. I looked at Elena, at her bandaged hands, at the exhaustion she wore like armor, at everything she'd given to keep my ranch alive. "She did," I said. My voice carried across the stall. "Every piece here. She's a blacksmith. This ranch stands because of her." Elena's head turned. Something flickered across her face. Surprise, then something deeper. Something that had been locked away. The rancher nodded, impressed. "I'll take 3 of these. Can you make more?" "I can," Elena said quietly. The sale was made. Others followed. Vale watched from the shadows, his certainty cracking. By dusk we'd sold everything. The shelves were empty. The lockbox was full. Orders for future work were written in my ledger. Weeks of guaranteed income. Elena counted the money twice. Looked at me. "It's enough," she said. He nodded. Couldn't speak. The relief was too large. We packed the wagon as night fell. Christmas lights glowed in windows. Somewhere church bells rang. We drove through the night, neither willing to stop. The wagon wheels creaked over frozen ground. Stars scattered overhead like thrown silver. I held the reins loose, letting the horses set their own pace. Beside me, Elena sat wrapped in a blanket, the lockbox on her lap. She hadn't let it out of her sight since we'd left Red Bluff. Neither of us slept. Too much adrenaline. Too much fear that if we stopped moving something would go wrong. That the money would disappear. That the bank would foreclose early. That Vale would find some way to take it all. We reached the ranch as dawn broke on Christmas morning. The house looked the same, weathered, sagging, half-broken. But something felt different. Maybe it was us. Maybe survival changed how you saw things. I unhitched the horses while Elena carried the lockbox inside. When I entered, she had the money spread on the table, counting it a 3rd time. "Making sure it's all here," she said. "Every dollar." I sat down heavily. My body ached in ways I'd forgotten were possible, but the ache felt earned now. "Honest. The bank opens at 9, I said. "I know." We sat in silence as the light grew. Outside, the ranch woke slowly. Cattle lowing, wind moving through broken boards, the windmill creaking its steady complaint. All the sounds of a place that refused to die. At 8:30 we rode into town. The bank was a square brick building that had always felt like a courthouse to me. A place of judgment. Elena and I walked in together, the lockbox between us. The banker, a thin man named Garrison, looked up from his desk. Surprise crossed his face when he saw us. "Mr. Blackwood," he said. "I wasn't expecting you until later." "We're here to settle the debt," I said. Garrison's eyebrows rose. He glanced at Elena, then back to me. "The full amount." "The full amount." We counted it out on his desk. Every bill, every coin. Garrison verified it twice. His expression shifting from doubt to something like respect. When he was satisfied, he pulled out the paperwork. "This clears your debt in full," he said. He stamped the documents, signed them, slid them across the desk. "The ranch is yours, free and clear." He took the papers. They felt heavier than they should have, lighter than I'd feared. Outside, Elena stopped on the boardwalk. She looked at me. "That's it?" she asked. "That's it." She nodded slowly. Something released in her shoulders. Tension she'd been holding for days, maybe longer. We rode back in silence. When we reached the ranch, I walked to the bunkhouse and tore down the foreclosure notice. The nails came out easy. The paper crumpled in my fist. I threw it into the forge pit where Elena had built her first fire. Inside the cabin we made coffee. Real coffee this time, not the burnt substitute I'd been stretching. We sat at the table with the papers between us. Proof of ownership. proof of survival. What now? Lena asked. I looked at her. At this woman who'd arrived a week ago expecting stability and found ruins instead. Who'd rebuilt a forge in the dark. Who'd worked until her hands bled. Who'd gambled everything on a Christmas market because quiet defeat wasn't acceptable. Now we work, I said. The forge has orders. The ranch needs repairs. Spring will bring more cattle if we can afford them. It won't be easy. It hasn't been easy, Elena said. No, I agreed. It hasn't. She smiled. The first real smile I'd seen from her. It changed her face completely. Good, she said. Easy's not worth much. We drank our coffee. Outside, the forge sat cold but ready. The ranch stood damaged but standing. The debt was gone, but the labor remained. It wasn't a fairy tale ending. It was something better. It was a beginning built on truth. Winter settled in after Christmas, slow and deliberate. The ranch didn't transform overnight. The fences still sagged. The windmill still needed a new blade. The barn roof leaked when it snowed. But the work felt different now. Not desperate scrambling against collapse, but deliberate building toward something that might last. Elena kept the forge running. Orders came in steadily, carried by word that spread through the county like roots finding water. She made tools, hinges, repaired wagon parts. I worked beside her when I could, hauling coal, organizing supplies, keeping the books. The rest of the time I mended what was broken. Fixed the well pump, shored up fence posts, cleared snow from the barn. We worked hard, slept hard, spoke when words were needed. The mercantile order came through. Custom door hardware that took Elena 3 weeks to complete. The mining company sent payment up front for the hooks, then doubled the order. A rancher 2 counties over-commissioned a set of gates. The money came in. Not floods but steady. Enough to buy feed. Enough to pay for lumber. Enough to breathe. Vale rode by once more in late January. He sat on his horse at the property line, looking at the smoke rising from the forge, at me working on the fence. He didn't say anything, just sat there for a long moment, then turned his horse and rode away. He didn't come back. By February, the ranch had settled into a rhythm. Elena worked the forge 5 days a week, taking custom orders on contract. I ran the ranch side. What cattle remained, the land itself, the infrastructure that held it all together. We ate together, planned together, divided labor according to skill instead of assumption. We didn't marry right away. There was too much work, too much exhaustion, too much history of desperation and lies that needed time to settle into something honest. Romance felt like a luxury neither of us had earned yet. But something grew anyway. Quiet, rooted in shared exhaustion and mutual respect. In the way Elena left coffee for me before dawn. In the way I prepared her tools without being asked. In conversations that moved past survival into possibility. Spring came slowly. The grass returned. 3 calves were born. Elena took on an apprentice, a young man from town who wanted to learn the trade. The forge expanded, a new shed built to house additional equipment. In late April, we stood together at the property line, looking out over land that had almost been lost. It's not what you advertised, Elena said. I looked at her. No. You promised land, a roof, and a future, she said. The land's half broken. The roof leaks. And the future's still uncertain. I know, I said. I'm sorry. Lena smiled. I'm not complaining. I'm just saying it's different than expected. Is that bad? No, she said. It's honest. We stood quiet, watching the wind move through new grass. We should probably make it official, I said. The ranch. Us. Elena turned to look at me fully. Is that a proposal? If you want it to be. She laughed, a sound I'd come to recognize as rare and valuable. Not your best work, James. No, I admitted. It's not. I'll take it anyway. We married in June, in front of witnesses who knew what we'd survived. No grand ceremony, no pretense. Just 2 people who'd chosen partnership over pride, work over fantasy. The forge burned bright that evening. Music played. People danced in the yard where foreclosure notices had once hung. Elena and I stood together watching. The ranch spread out around us, damaged but healing, broken but standing. Built not on luck or rescue, but on labor and honesty and the quiet strength of two people who refused to quit. It wasn't a fairy tale. It was better than that. It was real. Summer brought heat that baked the earth hard. The cattle moved slow through yellow grass, searching for shade. The forge burned hotter than ever, Elena working through the worst of it because orders kept coming and we couldn't afford to turn down work. I'd hired 2 hands by then, young men who needed employment and weren't afraid of hard labor. They helped with the cattle, the fencing, the endless repairs that a working ranch demanded. The money situation had stabilized. Not comfortable but sustainable. We'd paid off the bank, built up a small reserve. Enough to weather a bad month or an unexpected expense. The fear of losing everything had faded, replaced by the steady anxiety of maintaining what we'd saved. Elena's reputation grew. People traveled from further away now, bringing work that local smiths couldn't handle. Complex repairs, custom pieces, specialty items. She charged accordingly. Fair prices but not cheap. She'd earned the right. One afternoon in July, a rider came from the territorial capital. Official-looking, documents in his saddlebag. He asked for Elena by name. I was in the barn when I heard voices. Walked out to find them talking by the forge. The man was explaining something, gesturing at papers. Elena's face was unreadable. When he finished, she thanked him. He rode away. She stood there looking at the documents. What was that about? He asked. Elena didn't answer immediately. Just kept staring at the papers. The territorial government is building a new courthouse, she said finally. They're commissioning metalwork. Gates, railings, decorative elements. The architect saw my work at the Red Bluff Market. Someone showed him the cottonwood hinge. That's good news. It's a 6-month project, Elena said. Full-time work. The payment would be more than we made all last year. Waited. There was more. I'd have to go to the capital, she said. Set up a temporary forge there. The pieces are too large to transport unfinished. Too much risk of damage. Understanding settled in my chest, cold and heavy. How long? 6 months. Maybe 8, depending on complications. We stood in silence. The forge ticked as it cooled. Somewhere a horse whinnied. You should do it, I said. Elena looked at me. The ranch needs both of us. The ranch needs money more than it needs both of us here at the same time, I said. This kind of contract, it sets us up for years. We could expand. Buy more cattle. Hire permanent hands. Build a real future instead of just surviving. James. You've earned this, I said. This is your work, your reputation. I won't be the reason you turn it down. Elena's jaw tightened. We built this together. And we'll keep building it together, I said. Just from different places for a while. It's 6 months, Elena. We've survived worse. She looked at the papers again. The forge. At the ranch spreading out around us. I need to think about it, she said. She took 3 days. I watched her wrestle with it, saw the conflict play out in how she worked. Harder than necessary, longer than made sense. Pushing herself like punishment or preparation. I couldn't tell which. On the 3rd night she made her decision. I'm going, she said. But I'm coming back. Every month for at least a week. And you write me. Everything that happens here I want to know. I'll write, I said. She left in August. I helped her load the wagon with tools, supplies, everything she'd need for a temporary forge. We didn't say much. Words felt insufficient for what we were doing. At the property line she stopped. Looked back at the ranch. Don't let it fall apart while I'm gone, she said. Don't let them underpay you, I said. She smiled. Snapped the reins. The wagon rolled forward. I stood there until I couldn't see her anymore. Then I went back to work. The ranch wouldn't run itself. The first month without Elena was harder than I'd expected. Not because the work was impossible but because the silence was. The forge sat cold. The yard felt empty. Even the cattle seemed to notice, moving restless through the pastures like they were looking for something. Kept busy. Hired a third hand. Started on the barn expansion we'd been planning. Worked until exhaustion made sleep possible. Elena's letters came weekly. Detailed accounts of the courthouse project, the challenges of working with government bureaucracy, the satisfaction of creating something that would outlast us all. I wrote back. Shorter letters, less eloquent. Ranch updates, financial reports, small observations about daily life. She never complained about the brevity. Just wrote back with more questions, pulling details from me that I didn't know I had. By September, I'd settled into a rhythm. Wake before dawn, check the cattle, work on whatever project needed attention. Handle the books, sleep, repeat. The hands were reliable. The ranch was holding steady. The money from Elena's contract had started coming in, regular payments that let us think beyond next month. Vale appeared again in October. I was mending fence when I saw him riding up. Same expensive horse, same confident posture. But something was different. He looked older, tired. He dismounted without asking permission, walked to where I was working. Heard your wife's working the capital project, he said. She is. Impressive work. I've seen the preliminary pieces. I didn't respond. Just kept working the post-hole digger. I came to make an offer, Vale said. Not interested. You haven't heard it yet. Don't need to. Vale was quiet for a moment. I'm not trying to buy you out, he said. I want to hire you. That made me stop. I looked at him. What? I've been expanding, Vale said. Bought 3 ranches in the past year. Good land, but I need people who know how to run them. People who understand the work, not just the profit margins. You saved this place when you had nothing. That takes knowledge I don't have. You want me to work for you. As a ranch manager. Good salary, percentage of profits, full authority over operations. You'd still own this place. Still live here. But you'd oversee my properties too. I studied him. Looking for the angle, the trap. Why me? Because you're stubborn, Vale said. And that stubbornness made you successful when success wasn't likely. Can use that. And because your wife's going to be traveling for work. High-end commissions, government contracts, private clients. You'll need flexible income and time. This gives you both. He had a point. Elena's success was opening doors we'd never imagined. Doors that would take her away from the ranch more often. Having income that didn't depend on my constant presence would matter. I need to think about it, I said. Take your time, Vale said. Offer stands until you decide. He rode away. I finished the fence, then sat on the porch as the sun went down, thinking about Elena's courthouse project, about her skill outgrowing this ranch, about what partnership meant when success pulled in different directions. I wrote her that night, told her about Vale's offer, just what she thought. Her response came 2 weeks later. You saved this ranch when I arrived, she wrote. Now it's time to let it save you back. Take the offer. Build something bigger. I'll build mine. We'll meet in the middle. I accepted Vale's offer in November. Started managing his properties in December. The work was different, larger scale, more complex. But the principles were the same. Good land, good cattle, good people. The rest was details. Elena came home for Christmas. We spent a week together, talking about her projects, my new responsibilities, how our lives were changing in ways we'd never planned. It wasn't what we'd imagined when she'd answered my ad. It was better. Built on honesty instead of desperation. On respect instead of need. We're building an empire, she said one night, lying beside me in the dark. We're building a life, I said. Same thing, she said. Maybe it was. The years moved like seasons, each one bringing change we'd learned to work with instead of fight against. Elena's reputation grew beyond the territory. Commissions came from as far as San Francisco, from private estates and public buildings, From people who wanted ironwork that was art as much as function. She traveled more, came home less, but the time we had together felt concentrated. Valuable in its scarcity. I managed Vale's empire and built our own. The ranch expanded. We bought adjacent property when it became available. Hired more hands, built better structures, invested in breeding stock that improved the herd. The money from Elena's work and mine combined into something neither of us could have achieved alone. By the 5th year we were wealthy by any measure. Not Vale wealthy but comfortable, secure. The kind of secure that let you sleep without worrying about foreclosure notices or failed harvests or banks calling in debts. We were sitting on the porch one evening in June, watching the sun set over land that was fully ours, when Elena said something that had been building for a while. "I want to open a school," she said. I looked at her. "A blacksmithing school. For women. Teach them the trade properly, give them the skills to support themselves. The way my father taught me." "Where?" "Here," Elena said. "We have the land. We can build the forges, the workshops, housing for students. Make it a real institution." Thought about it. About the forge that had saved us. About Elena working alone in the dark because the world didn't trust women with hammers and anvils. About how many other women might have the skill but not the opportunity. "We'll need funding," I said. "We have funding," Elena said. "Between what we've saved and what we can raise, it's possible. The question is whether you want to do it. It's your dream. It's our ranch," Elena said. "Our money. Our decision." I looked at the land, at everything we'd built from nothing. At the forge that still stood where Elena had first fired it in the dark before dawn. "Let's do it," I said. We broke ground in September. Built 6 forges, a workshop, a dormitory, a classroom. Elena designed every detail, drew on years of experience to create something that would actually teach instead of just look impressive. We opened the Morrison School of Metalwork the following spring. 8 women enrolled in the first class. By the 2nd year we had a waiting list. By the 5th year, the school's reputation exceeded even Elena's. Graduates went on to open their own shops, work for railroads and mining companies, teach others. The network grew, women supporting women in a trade that had tried to exclude them. I watched Elena teach one afternoon, standing in the workshop doorway. She was demonstrating a complex welding technique. The students gathered around her forge. Her hands moved with the same precision I'd seen that first morning when she'd rebuilt our forge in the dark. But now she wasn't working to save a dying ranch. She was building something that would outlast us both. She looked up, caught me watching. Smiled. That night we walked the property line like we used to. The ranch stretched around us, prosperous and productive. The school buildings glowed with lamplight. Somewhere, hammer strikes rang out as students practiced late. "We did good," Elena said. "You did good," I said. "I just kept things running." "You kept us running," Elena said. "There's a difference." We stood at the spot where the foreclosure notice had once hung. Where Vale had made his offers. Where everything had almost ended before it could begin. "I was thinking," Elena said, "about that ad you placed. Land, roof, future. I remember. You delivered," she said. Eventually, I agreed. She took my hand. "Thank you," she said. "For lying badly enough that I came anyway." I laughed. "Thank you for being stubborn enough to save us both." We walked back to the house. Behind us, the ranch breathed in the darkness. The forge fires glowed. The cattle settled. The land that had almost been lost held steady beneath our feet. We'd built an empire from desperation and honesty, from ironwork and persistence, from 9 days that had seemed like the end but turned out to be just the beginning. It wasn't the partnership I'd advertised. It was better than that. It was real. And it was ours.